Hi everyone, welcome to the Stay Hungry podcast. I've got a special guest for you and I'll let him introduce himself. Who are you?
I am Charlie Locke. Thanks very much for having me on the podcast. I am the co-founder of SDR Nation, which is a community that I've built for entry level sales reps. Formerly a VP of sales leader for the last 10 years, and then before that, a individual contributor sales guy. So about 20 years in sales, and most of it always in the software industry. But now for the last 6 years, I've been picking away at starting my own businesses. Have had 3 that have failed, and finally this last one, SDR Nation, is starting to work. It's a bit of background about me.
Awesome. So what are you bringing to the podcast today?
I'm here to talk to you about anything that has to do with essentially learning about a customer and what you should build for them to get paid. I've been painfully going through the motions of being an entrepreneur for the last 6 years, and and finally I've landed on a business that I've been successful in. And like today I'm happy to talk about all things starting a business, scaling up a business, automating everything that you can to make it easier for you to start a business with a lean methodology. Anything that you think would be relevant, Joel?
I like it. I mean, yeah, lean methodology is a cool one. But so what were the 3 failures, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, my first one was a business called Sassly, about as stupid of a name you can think of. But basically it was, I worked at Salesforce for 3 years. And one of the things that I noticed there, basically Salesforce doesn't really work out of the box. It's kind of like a blank canvas. CRM, customer relationship management system, basically a database where you hold all your customer information and then build workflows to either do sales or sales development or marketing on top of it. And so but it takes a lot of customization to make it work. So we build an out-of-the-box implementation of Salesforce specifically for SaaS companies, software companies with a recurring revenue model.
Sure.
And so that one failed. We basically built 13 versions of our product for 13 different customers. So the product wasn't scalable at all. Learned a ton about product. The other one was, or another one was a little app called Shakespeare.io or .ai, sorry, which was a Chrome extension which would personalize emails really, really quickly so that you could essentially type in someone's email and it would go hunt for information on them on the web and then help you craft an email based on who they are. So with 3 or 4 clicks, so you could essentially personalize an email. But we tried, I learned a lot about testing and a lot about lean methodology before that company, insofar as, the core truth we were trying to prove was that personalized emails get more replies than canned emails. And so before we went off and started selling this thing and, marketing it and putting more revenue behind money behind it, we tested that. So we sent out 5 custom emails and 5,000 custom emails and 5,000 canned emails. And the reply rate was exactly the same. So we, and at that point I was running out of money. So that was another one that suffered.
I see. So the reason I asked, obviously the podcast is called Stay Hungry, and clearly you have. So
yeah.
So how come you've managed to stick with it?
Because you learn so much in those failures, right? And you realize how naive you were, or just, I don't know what the right word is, ignorant, or you had the blinders on to what you actually needed to do to make that business successful. And so when you go through that failure, you obviously get clarity on all of the things that you did wrong and all the things you could avoid for next time. And one of my favorite stories is whenever we would go to a venture capital firm to raise capital, for Sassly, for our business, and the VC would ask me, they'd say, "Is this your first startup?" And I would, have a big smile on my face thinking, yeah, it is. And yes, like this is probably what you're excited about. And so I'd say, yeah, it's our first startup. And the look of disappointment on their face, because they rarely invest in first time entrepreneurs, for the pure reason that you need to fail. Like, you actually have to fail to be successful. It's one of those things where if you haven't gone through that failure, you will, very likely.
Sure.
And so you don't see a ton of entrepreneurs where their first business is the one that actually works. So yeah, it might look that way on paper because they were, started the business when they were 20, but they were probably started 5 businesses between when they were 10 to 18 years old.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And so you just don't, those aren't on LinkedIn. But yeah, in most cases, I think that's the thing that keeps me hungry, is the learning and the excitement of that knowledge, and so that's what's kept me hungry, is like, okay, well, now I know more, I can try this again.
Yeah, and learning on the job as well. I was talking to a client today, and I said, we've got some amazing results with your advertising, and I've got a load more ideas for you. And they said, well, why didn't you apply those in the first place? And I said, well, I didn't know them a year ago.
Yeah,
They're new ideas, and because you have to keep learning. It's not static.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
exactly.
Your successful business, what is it?
So it's SDR Nation.
Mm-hmm.
And so SDR, for those of you that don't know, means sales development rep. Basically the first role in sales that you would normally get straight out of college or university or some post-secondary education, or high school if you don't go to it. And it's essentially cold calling, a lot of either cold calling or working in inbound marketing function
Sure.
of some sort. And so essentially, about 50 years ago, someone, there was a lot of door knockers, right? Salespeople were going door to door and they were selling Bibles or what have you. And at some point, one super smart, operator said, well, why am I having, 8 times out of 10, someone doesn't open the door? So why am I having all my best closers, basically my best salespeople, going and knocking in doors and wasting time when I just want them talking to the 2 doors that open? So we created a second team of people that just knocked on doors. And once they got someone to the door and opened the door, they would, have a big flag and wave down the closer to come in and actually do the meeting. And that's essentially what sales development reps are. They're booking meetings for account executives, folks that have a little bit more sales experience. Kind of think of it as like your first job in sales, where you really cut your teeth. You're getting rejected a lot. You're having to learn a bunch of different tools, a bunch of different processes. You're learning how to write emails, cold call, talk to people, engage with people, learning how to sell over social networks like LinkedIn and Instagram and Twitter. And it's sort of this cross section between marketing and sales, because you're really basically doing marketing in a one-to-one fashion versus, one-to-many, which is what most marketing functions do. So it's a great learning experience, but you really get hardened in doing it, and it prepares you for the next role in sales. Very much similar to, someone who wants to be a chef. You got to peel potatoes and go through those hard years first and earn your stripes before you move on through the ranks. But it's a hard job, and it's a really painful job, and for a lot of folks, because there are sales degrees, which is kind of crazy if you think about it. There's marketing degrees, there's finance degrees, there's economics, there's HR degrees now. Starting to see some sales degrees, but for whatever reason, people don't consider sales a profession still, if you think about it, which is kind of crazy. And our parents certainly don't think that is, because parents are the customers of universities and colleges. And that's obviously why universities and colleges aren't building sales degrees, because they don't think anyone's going to pay for it. And so, but there's been a huge shift in the last 20 years of sales just being something like, oh, Tony, he was a good talker, he's in sales. Guess what? Salespeople with 8 years experience, maybe 6 years experience, are making more money than doctors, engineers, architects, lawyers, all these professional careers, because it's turned into much more of a science over the last 20 years. Sure. And so anyways, the problem I'm solving is that there aren't sales degrees. And so every sales development rep, when you start at a company, you probably don't have any sales experience. You don't have any sales training. You don't have any sales schooling. And so all of your success is based around the idea that your company is going to train you or your manager is going to train you to sell. And a lot of these organizations just aren't set up to do that, not for any fault of their own. They might be a 15, 20 person company, like some of you listeners out there, and you hire your first salesperson, or maybe you're not hiring your first salesperson because you're scared to do it because you don't know how to train them. You've never done sales, and you've never maybe gone through that motion, or you don't know who to look for and what to hire. So we are a support net, essentially. We're a school for sales development reps, and it's a paid community. So we decided to build this community this school in a medium called community, which is essentially a forum, discussion forums where we host events. They can get one-on-one coaching from other sales experts. They can ask each other about how to do it, but essentially helping SDRs basically hit their number and get good at their job, but then get promoted.
Amazing. So something I encounter working with a lot of small businesses, particularly, we're a marketing company by trade, is when they get to a certain size, they want a sales team. And so they get a salesperson in, and usually they're disappointed because they don't know what to expect and the salesperson doesn't know what to expect. How often do you encounter that?
All the time. Yeah.
Sure.
Very common.
So kind of what's the solution to
that? I think first and foremost, there's a lot that goes into hiring salespeople. And so I've hired hundreds of salespeople in my career, maybe thousands, I don't know. And I've met with a lot of, probably 10 times as many poor salespeople.
Sure.
And so knowing what to look for in a salesperson is very, very difficult. And so, I could say, it all comes down to what compensation plan you put in place, what sort of accountability you put in place, what tools they have, all these things surrounding the person to make them an effective salesperson, clear direction, all those sorts of things, better training. Those could be all the things. But at the end of the day, if you hire an awesome salesperson, they'll figure it out. And so it really does, where I see most of that failure happening is they just hire the wrong type of salesperson for their business. Okay. And especially with an early stage company, where you're hiring your first salesperson, you don't know what the sales process probably is yet. You might have done it yourself as a founder and gone through it, but there's still a lot more learning to be done. And you also have the founder mystique or magic, I would call it, right? When you talk about your business, it's your business, and you're talking to people like, oh, I'm talking to the founder, right? But when you bring on a salesperson, they don't have that same history. Like, I can tell you my story of why I started SDR Nation and why it's important to me. And that really resonates. I'm telling stories and people are like, oh, this is a really interesting idea. But when I have a sales rep going through that same thing, they can't authentically tell my story. It's a bit weird, right? So, so you need to almost build a new sales process for folks that aren't founders, essentially. And so what I'm saying is that with that first sales rep, you're going to want to find someone that's maybe already done that before, maybe been at a company at a very, very early stage when the sales process wasn't defined and actually had their hands involved with defining it. You want someone that's going to be very comfortable just going and talking to a lot of your current customers and finding out what their life was like before they bought your solution, why they bought your solution, what their life's after, like when they bought your solution. So they can start to think about how they're going to craft messaging and present value in some fashion, or what the sales process is going to be. So I guess what I'm saying is, I think a lot of people will hire sales reps who was a top rep at a big company or, a medium-sized company where they had all this structure. That's not going to work. You don't have structure. So don't hire that person, because they're going to come in wondering, where's all the structure? Where's my comp plan? Where's my system? Where's my tools? Where's my data? Blah, blah, blah. You want almost just like a really smart engineer, like entrepreneur, who is comfortable with tons of ambiguity, tons of gray, tons of fog, who wants to sift through it with you.
Yeah, I love that. That somebody who's willing to seek clarity through the fog. We've got a lady in our team at the moment that's going through a lot of sales training because of exactly that trait, that she's always looking for an answer, and
Yeah.
and not many people are. So it's amazing. So yeah, we're in that position at the minute where, and a lot of UK companies, I don't know how aware of this you'll be. Sales is a bit of a dirty word in the UK. So so if you say sales in the UK, people think of door-to-door salespeople. They think of call centers, and they think of car salesmen. They're like the three stereotypes.
And what are all the words that you think of in your mind when you think of those types of salespeople, right? You think pushy, sleazy, greedy, annoying, right? Self-serving, right? Those are all the emotions and feeling that come into your mind when you think of that type of salesperson, right?
Sure. So exactly. We've just started building our sales process because even though we're a decent sized company, we're successful, we actually didn't really have a sales process. It was in my head. So and when I talk to people about the fact we're building our sales process, it's like we've gone from a nice company to an evil company. You've gone from, oh right, people want to buy from you because what you do is good, to you trick people into buying from you. I know that's not true. That's not true. But how do we explain that to the listeners?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you mentioned that UK trait. So I'm Canadian. I just told you before we got on recording here that I'm half Welsh. So I actually have a British passport, so I can sneak over there pretty quickly if I want to and not have to wait in the long line, I guess. But it was funny when I was at Shutterstock, we had a meeting of all the sales leaders from across the globe. We all came to New York, and and we were talking about titles for all the sales reps, and the senior sales leaders in the UK were dead set on having these very specific titles that would not even give an inclination of sales in the title of the person's,
business development manager,
director of something or whatever, right? And I remember asking that question. So like, why do you care so much about what their title is? It's like, well, in the UK, it's a sort of a dirty word, and like exactly what you just said. And I was just like, yeah, but then why are you trying to lie to people by not putting sales in your title? Like if you're so concerned about sales being a profession of convincing, of tricking, of manipulation, then why are you starting right out of the gates by tricking people with the title? Like, it just made no sense to me at all. Like, okay, like I'm going to try to, if my title doesn't say sales, then maybe they'll take a meeting with me and book a meeting with me just to find out that I'm a salesperson. That sounds really, doesn't make sense to me at all. So I guess what I'm getting at is that I train people on a process to be as authentic as possible about the fact that you're trying to sell people shit. And being as upfront as possible about that. But then differentiating, because that in itself is a huge differentiator, right? Because everyone else is basically coming in saying, I just want to book a meeting and see what your interests are. Or no, it's not even that. It's like, I'm just curious about your strategies for 2022. And, if we, like, it's just like, no, I'm trying to sell you shit. And like, but here's the deal. I'm a different type of salesperson. Most salespeople are going to try to waste your time, suck your time by not really telling you what they really want to do, which they're going to try to sell you something. I'm going to basically bring you down a process where I'd like to figure out whether you can make a decision or not. Yes or no, I do not care. The thing that people forget about sales is that the reason why people don't buy things is because they just don't make a decision. It's not because they're buying something else. It's not because they're buying some competitor's software or product or whatever it might be. It's just that they can't make a decision. You think about it yourself. You get presented with all these buying opportunities. all the time. People are trying to sell you things all the time. Sometimes you get engaged in that sales process, but the times when you don't buy, it's just because it just wasn't that important. It dropped off your priority list. You forgot about it. The salesperson didn't follow up, whatever it is. You just didn't make a decision, yes or no. You were stuck in maybe land. So where all deals die is at maybe. That's where the worst salespeople live. Crappy salespeople have a ton of maybes in their pipeline.
Yeah. Can you send an email?
Yeah, exactly. They're like, oh, I'm just like, they'll send up another email and I'll get them eventually. It's like, no. So how you differentiate yourself as a salesperson to be different than all the sleazy, greedy, inauthentic, annoying other salespeople is that you're a salesperson that's simply trying to sell a process to make a decision, yes or no. And you genuinely have to believe that if I'm going, so when I sit down and talk to you, Joel, and say, hey, here's what this is going to look like. We're going to spend half an hour to get today. And I'm going to ask you some questions. I'm going to maybe show you my software. At the end of that, you're probably going to want to keep going on the sales process and we can talk about those next steps, or you're going to think it's not a good fit for you. In either case, I'm totally fine with that. Just tell me which one. Just by me saying that and you hearing that, like that's totally different than every other sales rep, because every other sales rep is saying, I don't want to hear no. Don't tell me no. Just, I want yeses, only yeses. But that in itself just creates this huge amount of distrust, creates a filter that you're not going to give me clear information because you're worried that I'm just going to manipulate that into you saying yes somehow.
Sure.
So basically what I'm saying is where you need to go with your sales process is train your reps to sell a process for your prospects to make a decision, yes or no. You can care which one it is. And if you build your culture around that, your sales culture around people that help people make decisions, yes or no, you'll get very authentic salespeople. You'll have a very authentic sales process, and you'll build a ton of trust in that sales process, and customers will love you.
Yeah, I love that. And then you're not tricking people into buying something they don't need, which is
it doesn't work anyways.
101. Yeah,
people don't. It doesn't happen. Buyers. I mean, sometimes we do it, but like what happens a lot is people try to do that, and then buyers get lose trust, and so they have this stigma for sale. There's a lot of crappy salespeople out there. Don't get me wrong. So but like at the end of the day, that system doesn't work. Buyers are smart now. They have way more information than they ever did. Usually before a salesperson's job was to get them from like 40% to 100%. Now it's like you get them from 95% to 100%. They already have done all the research, right?
So talk to me about that, because a guy I've worked with before says selling is telling, but then there's closing. And obviously with the internet, with websites, with lead magnets, a lot of the sell is done before the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're talking to clients, they don't understand the difference between selling and closing. But obviously a sales rep has to know. So what is it?
Well, first off, I don't believe selling is telling.
Okay.
Selling, I mean, you have the analogy I use is that you have two ears and one mouth, and you should use them in that fashion. And so selling is actually.
I hoped you'd say that.
Selling is actually asking questions. Now, buyers don't think that way. Buyers are used to selling is telling. They're like, tell me what your product is. I'll go away. I'll make a decision. Then I'll ask you questions and I'll figure out if I'm going to buy or not. That system doesn't work very well, though, primarily because you have no idea here's a great analogy for you. Let's say you go into a doctor's office and you hurt your elbow, right? You have some sort of pain in your elbow. You don't really know what you kind of, you're playing tennis or something and it's really painful. And you go in the doctor's office and they give you the selling is telling approach, right? And with the selling is telling approach would be this: hey, welcome to my office. Thanks for, what's going on? It's like, oh, I really hurt my elbow. Great. Hurt your elbow? No problem. Check out my certificates on the wall here that I've gotten from all the other patients that I've worked with in my career. oh, and by the way, check out all this amazing instrumentation I have and this really cool facility that I have. And they're pitching you and pitching you and pitching on how great of a doctor they are and how great their product is. And they do this for 20 minutes. And at the end of it all, they say, so what you need some aspirin and a sling for your arm. And you walk out of there by just getting talked to, telling all the time for 20 minutes. And you're holding this bandage and some aspirin and you're going, what the fuck? Like, like how do you really think you're actually going to use that? Like, there was zero trust built. So versus the other doctor, the doctor who says, tell me what's going on. And you say, my elbow hurts. I'm like, oh, does it hurt when you bend it this way or this way, that way? How did you hurt it? Oh, I hurt it playing tennis. How long ago was that? Oh, that was this. And like, okay, well, when does it hurt during the day? Does it hurt at night? And they ask you all these questions to diagnose where the specific pain is, why it's that pain. At the end of it all, they say, you know what, based on all the things you told me over the last 20 minutes, by me asking you all these questions, you need an aspirin and a bandage. You're going to walk out of that room and be like, awesome, this aspirin and the bandage is exactly what I need. And I feel so comfortable about that because the doctor built all this trust with me in asking me all these questions. So if you think building trust is telling people shit, you're wrong. It's actually asking questions is what builds trust. So great salespeople, they don't pitch a lot. They actually just ask a lot of really smart questions about someone's business, but why they're even talking in the first place, but what problem they have, how long they've had it, what they've tried to fix it. And by doing that, they know exactly what to pitch at the end, and they know exactly what to position because they know the pain so well. Buyers just want sellers to know their pain. The actual solution typically isn't the answer. If you're in the telling business, you're in marketing. That's what marketers do. Marketer, that's your job. You're supposed to tell. You don't have typically a one-on-one audience to be able to ask questions, so you have to tell. But in sales, that's the beauty of it. We have the one-on-one audience. So why would you waste it by talking? Because it doesn't really build trust. Asking questions builds trust. So anyways, that's my first spiel on that, which is around the selling is telling. Around closing though, I think where people struggle with closing is that they think of it as the last step in the process. And it certainly is, obviously. I mean, that's when it actually happens. But the act of closing should start from the very first time you actually start talking to your prospect. And what I mean by that is you're selling the process right from the beginning of, here's what's going to happen with me. We're going to do a meeting today, and this meeting is going to take half an hour, and I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions because I'm not a teller. I want to ask questions. And then after that, I'm going to show you a bit of my product. And then if we want to, after that, one of three things are going to happen. Either you're going to want to buy right away, right? And if you do, great, we can do that for you. Or you're going to have some questions, or we need to get other people involved. And so we'll have to set up another meeting. And then after that meeting, you might be at a point where you want to make a decision, yes or no at that point. Or the third option is after today, you look at my stuff and we go through it and you're like, no, it's not a fit for me. And that's fine. You can just tell me that. So what I'm doing there is called an upfront contract. That's the first thing I say in every sales engagement I'm doing. But what you're actually hearing is me talking about closing within the first 60 seconds. I'm saying you might buy today. That's one of the paths we could go down. So that when I'm getting to that point later on in the meeting, when it's time for the person, like you're done all your presenting and everything, I'm just like, which path do you want to go down? I've already talked to you about closing. We've already gone through that. If you love it, you could do that and we can negotiate a price right now and we can close. Or we can book another meeting, right? Get towards closing, or we can just say no and we can part ways as friends. But it's not a big thing. It's not a thing. It's not like all right, time for the close and time to corner them and get them into a corner. It's just like, hey, these are the paths we're going to go down. You're in control. You're the buyer. I'm just the guy helping you to get to that point to make a decision. That's it. That's all. That's my job. My job is not to convince you, not to sell you. It's just to give you the information you need to get to that point where you can make a yes or a no decision. So if you actually operate with that mentality, then you can start closing really early in your sales process. And then you're consistently trying to do that throughout the entire sales process.
Yeah, I love that. We open our calls with, at the end of this call, I'm going to offer you a deal. Same reason. Yeah. But the amount of suppliers I speak to that just don't do that, and I end up talking to them for ages, and I don't know why.
Yeah, I mean, even if you just think about the aspect of time, as a um so I tried in cold calls, for example. I train people very often to set tiny little contracts around time. When you call, hey, is it okay if I take 32 seconds of your time, tell you I'm calling? If after that you want to keep talking, great. If not, no big deal. Is that okay? That's your opener for a call. Because we've all been telemarketed to, right? And the thing that we hate when you're on the phone is that, when is this going to end? I don't know when this is going to end. Is this going to be half an hour? Is this going to be 1 minute? I don't know how long it's going to take. For that reason, I'm out. And you hang up. Or you just say, thanks, I got to go. And you hang up, right? If you just told people right out of the gates that it's going to take 30 seconds and you tell them the amount of time that it's going to take, then they can rationalize that decision and say, yeah, sure, okay, I can take that time. Now, let's say you go through your first 30 seconds and you ask them a question like, yeah, I'm really interested in that, or, you get into a conversation of some sort. You should reset the clock. And I train people all the time, like, hey, listen, we've gone past the 30 seconds. I would probably only need 4 to 5 more minutes of your time to figure out if we're a fit or not, and if we should book a meeting. Is that okay if we take 4 or 5 more minutes? Right? And you reset the clock, because you don't want to get past that 30-second mark and the person's like, well, I'm already past the 30-second mark. It's going to take a half hour, 15 minutes, 10 minutes. I got to go. I got my kids, whatever. So you reset the clock again. That aspect of telling people how much time each step is going to take is so, so, so important. And I don't know why, again, there's this belief out there that if you hide this information from buyers that you can trick them. I don't get it. We're not going to get tricked. So why are you trying it?
Sure, I get it. So how do people get in touch with you guys? How do companies set up their new sales recruits with you? How do people that want to get into the sales game get in touch?
Yeah, it's www.sdrnation.com. We've got right now 370 sales development reps in there who are working at small businesses, just trying to figure it out. And we're basically a school for them, so that you don't have to figure it out all as a founder, or you might be too busy as a sales leader with other types of sales functions. And you can go there. If you want to reach out to me, I'm on LinkedIn, just linkedin.com/Charlie Locke. LOCKE is my name, and you can reach out to me there if you got any questions. I'm happy to help you figure things out. Whether or not you have folks that you want to put in SDR Nation or not, I just want to help you get your sales function off the ground. So I'd be happy to help you in any way.
Awesome. That's awesome. And a question I ask every guest, and it's a weird one and nothing to do with sales. What's your favorite film and why?
Ooh, well, Pulp Fiction is the one that comes to mind pretty quick. I'm a big Tarantino fan. I mean, some of his movies I'm not a huge fan of, but the ones that I like are in my top 5. Inglourious Bastards probably has one of the best opening scenes of all time. Yeah. I'm a big fan of the way that Pulp Fiction the story was crafted, in the sense that there was no real linear timeline, and there was 4 different stories going on at once, and they all kind of combine at the end, and how he manages to make extreme gore funny somehow.
Yeah.
I don't know how he does that, but he's a master in his own domain.
Nice. Charlie, you've been an awesome guest. It's been great chatting to you. Thanks for coming on.
Awesome to meet you, Joel. Thanks a lot.